Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of what we're calling SoxProspects Shorts. We'll see if we're going to keep that name in the future, but I'm Chris, he's Ian, you know who we are. And what these are going to be are shorter episodes in which we talk about one topic, probably going to be timely usually. It's going to be in the mold of what we already do with our night one of the draft recap episodes. So these are going to be quick hitter, one topic episodes where we get in, get out, usually about a timely topic that we may want to do a preview and a review in short order. So we're not putting out, 2 full episodes of the podcast in like 3 days or something like that. But might be something that winds up behind the Patreon wall for Patreon supporters. Might be something we keep as episodes for all listeners. We'll see. We're workshopping it with this topic today, which today Ian and I are hopping on to talk about the Rule 5 protection deadline. Today is Tuesday, November 14th, and at 6:00 today, we're going to find out who the Red Sox are protecting from the Rule 5 draft. Actually, it might be a lot sooner. Some teams, as we find out today, Ian already announced who they're adding. Of note, the Milwaukee Brewers added Bradley Blaylock, who they received from the Red Sox via trade at the trade deadline to protect him from selection in the Rule 5 draft, which I found interesting because he was not a lock to be protected when he was still with the organization.
I think they would have protected him based on...
You think they would have?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did he do after he got traded, by the way?
He was good, but he got hurt. He had like an ankle injury, and so he only threw 13 innings, I believe. So the fact that they protected him even after he only threw 13 innings in high
for them meant they planned to when they traded for him then, clearly.
Yeah. I mean, he had 4 appearances, 13.2 innings in high A, 17 strikeouts, 7 walks.
All right.
But I mean, it's easy to see why he was protected. His fastball metrics are really good. And he's got, he's coming off Tommy John. There's probably more velocity in there. He's a short strider, but it's a really high carry fastball that he can pitch up in the zone with it. Throws a bunch of strikes with it. And so, I mean, he's throwing like 94 miles an hour. So if he can, if that bumps up even a little bit, he's a really interesting potential pen piece already. So I get it. And I frankly think he would have been taken pretty early if he didn't get protected. So I get it for that regard too. A lot of teams would have been interested in him solely based. I mean, just any model driven team would have looked at his fastball data and had him on their list.
Interesting preview there of what we're going to be talking about here with who the Red Sox might protect. And Ian, let's set the scene. The Red Sox have 37 guys on the 40-man roster, so they can add 3 players without doing anything. Adding any more is going to require clearing room on the 40-man roster, but I think we're in full agreement and we don't need to go player by player. There are a number of guys on the 40-man roster who are going to be removed at some point this offseason. It's just a matter of time. You look at guys like Logan Gillespie. There are guys on the 40-man who are basically there in the hopes that they will clear at whatever point the Red Sox decide to remove them from the 40-man. So like I said, there's a number of guys like that we're going to see come off. There's going to be more than 3 acquisitions for the Major League roster. So
yeah, that's what I was going to say is, I mean, between the 40-man ads and the Major League roster offseason moves, I suspect we will see more than 3 of them.
Yep.
So they're going to have to remove some players, and it'll be interesting to see though if they do take anyone else off before tomorrow's deadline or today's deadline, I guess later today. Because as of now, I would project them to add 3 people. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But I think you can make the case for they have some interesting choices that I think is going to come a lot down to what your internal evaluations of players are. And what makes it interesting to me is, and Craig Breslow has said this, he doesn't have a really good feel for the system. He's, learning quickly, basically trying to figure out.
He's relying on who's been here. Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting, decision, because this is really his first major, decision deadline, or, the first group of transactions he's really going to have to make are going to be with this coming up later today.
I think it's very largely going to be an Eddie Romero, Ben Crockett, Brian Abraham providing input, Paul Taboni providing input.
Yeah, he's going to have to
decision.
rely on the people who have been here and have been watching the system all season. Because it's just impossible for him in the short time he's been on the job to catch up to speed on every one of these players.
Exactly. Let's get into it then. And I guess the one thing we can mention really quick, because I was just thinking of it in terms of removing players, the other deadline that's coming up that we may, if we put out an episode in the meantime, we'll discuss it. But Friday is the non-tender deadline. Really the one player who comes to mind as potentially being non-tendered is Luis Urias. Will be interesting to see whether or not he is still around after Friday. I guess in theory, Bobby Dahlbeck. No, he's not. Why do we have him as arbitration?
No, he's not ARB yet.
He's not a Super 2. Right? He just missed it by 3 days, actually.
He's got one more rookie year, I believe.
Yeah, he's got one more year at the minimum because he missed Super 2 status by 3 days. Which is kind of crazy. So
it's crazy that he's the third longest tenured Red Sox.
At least on the 40 man, yeah.
On the 40 man, yeah.
Yeah. Which I guess would in theory make him the third longest tenured Red Sox.
Well, not necessarily, because someone could have been drafted before him, but just not added until
added later. Yeah, I guess that's true.
But still, because I think Brian Bayo would have been in New York before he was.
We'll have to look at that 20.
Bayo was July 2017.
Yep.
And Dahlbeck was, he was 2016. So maybe not. I mean, let's focus on what we need to.
Yeah, let's focus here because I got to crank this out and go to bed. I think we agree 3, if not 100% certain, near 100% certain ads in Shane Drohan, Wickelman Gonzalez, and Luis Perales in no particular order. The top 3 pitchers in our rankings right now. And in fact, I wouldn't even put them in that order of certainty, to be perfectly honest. What are your thoughts on that crew of 3 and their likelihood of being added?
So it's interesting because I was talking to some scouts today, and it was a pretty general consensus that those were the 3 names. But it was interesting hearing a lot of them were talking on Perales, especially. They're basically like, I wouldn't recommend him because he's too far away. And
for selection, you mean?
Yes, and I do wonder if what they did with Wickelman Gonzalez was a preview of how they handle Perales this year. Because if you remember, they didn't put him on the 40 last year, which we thought was a little bit of a surprise. Their gamble paid off barely.
Let me interject, because I don't know if it was a surprise so much as it was a surprise in context of who they did add.
Correct. Fair.
It's not like we were saying he was in this category last year. It was like, wow, they didn't add him. It was like, okay, they didn't add him, but then they added David Hamilton. It was like, wait,
what? But so they didn't add Gonzalez last year, and I think his situation though is very similar to what we're getting with Perales, where it's a pitcher who's reached only high A right now, has big stuff, command and control are a long ways away, and probably couldn't pitch in the majors right now, even if they do have the stuff. And he didn't get picked. He got very close to being picked by multiple teams, from what I understand.
This is Wickelman Gonzalez.
Yes, correct. And so I think he gets protected because they have the room. And
now you mean Luis Perales this year.
I'm switching back to Perales. Yeah.
Yes.
I think he's going to be protected because I would take Perales right now ahead of Wickelman Gonzalez last year in where they were. But I'm keeping that in the back of my mind because I do wonder if that might have been a preview of how they handled it too, where they basically dare a team to take him and just bet that they won't. Because, and I do wonder if this does go back to what we saw with Brian Mata, where having to add him to the 40 so early has basically caused a situation they're in now where, because he had that injury, he's not big league ready and out of options.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder if they're a little hesitant. Hesitant to do it for that reason and might try to gamble and keep Perales off. But at the end of the day, I think his stuff is so much better than I'll just say his fastball is so much better analytically than pretty much anyone else they have in the system.
Yeah.
That I think you have to do it because the risk you take of him, someone like the Royals or one of the teams that's not going to be contending, just being like, screw it, our model loves this fastball, let's give him a shot.
Yeah.
I think they have plenty of room on the 40, so I would protect him just as a kind of a, it's better safe than sorry is how I would look at it with him because I think his stuff is that good.
And you at that point, you're basically committing to making him a reliever. And like, there's like a 1% chance you can send him back down. And you're
saying not the Red Sox though.
Not the Red Sox. This is the team drafting Perales. Look, he's got a fastball. that immediately, like, it's the best fastball in the Red Sox system. Well, maybe not the best fastball.
It's got
Because
the high.
I might say
It's
Hoppy might
it's
have the
got the
best
most
fastball.
carry,
It's got the
and
most carry. It's got the most induced vertical break.
it's got a high spin rate. He gets, his extension's fine. It's got a high. He misses a lot of bats with it. Like he had a 36.2% swing whiff rate on it last year, which was, I think, second in the system behind Chris Troy for fastballs.
Okay.
So it's a very good pitch, and that's the type of stuff that no, it's actually third or third. I forgot about Joe Jones's fastball. Sorry.
Didn't see that coming. Okay.
But yeah, I could see a scenario where a model driven team just, they plug in that with his combined with his age. He's only 20 years old and it spits out a really high number and they just take a gamble.
Yep.
So I think he's going to be protected for that reason. But if he's not, it's because the Red Sox are basically playing the game of, we don't think anyone will take him because he's not ready to pitch in the majors yet.
And here's the thing too, is if I see this going one of two ways, right? It either goes he justifies their adding him and he turns into a potential, major league arm.
Yeah.
In short order. Or it's like he gets hurt. I guess there's three. The second
the hurt one is the Brian Mata path.
The second is the Brian Mata path, which is what the risk is. Or the third path, I think, is the Williams Jerez. Like, he's so bad you can DFA him and he clears in a year or two, right? Because he never gets the control lined up perfectly, and he gets to AA or AAA, and he just maybe Jerez isn't a direct comp, but just in the sense of if it goes south, it's not like you have to keep him on the 40-man for all 3 years that you're
no, and when you look at Perales, I mean, the thing that jumps out is in Greenville, 13.2% walk rate. That's not good at all. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't matter how good your stuff is if you can't harness it. And that's the concern with him is, and I think the other concern and why it's so important is even with as good as his fastball plays up in the zone, if he gets it down, it's a very hittable pitch. Like I've seen hitters hit some nukes off his fastball when it's down in the zone because it's a pretty straight pitch. So he's got to be able to command it for it to play, because it's not like he's bumping 98, 99 consistently like some of these other guys. He's more like 94 to 96. So he's an interesting one to me for that reason, because of his proximity. Whereas I think the other two, the flip side is true, where their stuff is definitely not as good as his, but they're much closer. And so you have to do it for that reason.
It's funny. I think the most likely, if they could not protect anyone, I think Wickham and Gonzalez is the first pitcher in their system that gets selected, or first player even that gets selected.
Oh, I think you have to protect him, because especially
he's the combination of stuff, results, proximity, that Perales is so far away, whereas Drohan had that weird just falling off when he reached AAA, not being able to deal with the AAA strike zone, or whatever the deal was, where his stuff also backed up. Yeah. I think Gonzalez kind of threads that needle, and he'd be the first guy taken. He'd be the Thaddeus Ward of maybe he goes 1-1, but
especially because you look at his last season where he moved up from Greenville to Portland and got better. In Portland or in Greenville, 63 innings, 49 hits, 42 walks, 105 strikeouts. So a ton of strikeouts, ton of walks. So what, 5.14 ERA, 1.44 whip. Then you look at Portland, 48 innings, 27 hits, 28 walks, 63 strikeouts. So that's 2.242 ERA, 1.14 whip. So his whip, he lost 0.3 off his whip.
Hits, though.
Yeah. But
so who knows? Maybe that's better fielding. Maybe that's luck.
Well, that is the question. But the if you saw him in Portland, he was a much better pitcher than he was in Greenville. Yeah. And I think that, that's with that bat missing ability, it's a lot easier to hide a guy who was in AA.
Yep. And then Drohan, I mean, it's proximity. He's just too close to leave it to chance. And
he's also left-handed. He's
left-handed. And you know what? If it continues to go south and he doesn't figure it out, it's not oh my God, he's going to be clogging up a 40-man spot for 3 years.
You'll know.
You're going to know this year if he's, if he's a starter, if he's a reliever, if he's a 4A guy. It's he's not a guy you're going to have to, carry as complete dead weight for multiple years.
And the bar for lefties is just lower.
Yeah, so. It's an easy ad. Put it this way. I'd want all three of these guys on the 40-man ahead of Logan Gillespie.
100%. Right. I would. There's 3 or 4 other pitchers I would say the same thing about. Yeah. Where after that is where it gets tricky.
Yep.
But I just
It's interesting that I think we both have the next guy the same, and it's not universal who the next guy is, because I'm seeing
No.
some names like that I guess are maybes, but like I don't see Ryan Fernandez in that maybe group in a consensus sense, and it's interesting to me. And that's who I have next in terms of likelihood. I don't know about you.
I don't, because I just think
Okay.
a lot of teams are going to take him off their boards because of his injury risk.
Really? Even though he finished the year healthy?
Yeah. It's just there's too many red flags from his past. And I think that's the concern for me with him is,
but it's a Rule 5 pick.
I know, but
he gets hurt, you send him back.
But if you only have one roster spot,
I guess.
do you want to burn it on a guy who might not be healthy?
Yeah, but there's upside there for me. And the thing is, it's not like he projects as a future closer. He's a good relief prospect. He messes around and gets a top 5% percentile outcome, and he becomes a setup guy. A late inning arm, maybe not a dominant closer, but a guy who throws the 6th, the 7th or 8th or the 9th if the closer needs the night off. But like, just for a Rule 5 pick,
I think it's just the injuries are the concern for me there. But I think that begs the question, though. It's, would you DFA someone like Logan Gillespie for him?
I would.
I think I would too, just for the upside. But then it comes in the flip side is, okay, but then when they go in the
DFA versus Rule 5 risk for one thing. And then
in the offseason, you add, let's say you go out and make a 4-for-2 trade, you bring in two guys, and then you also, that's why I feel like you might play the game with him and just kind of like how they did with AJ Politi last year. I think that's but
he's a much better prospect than AJ Politi was.
He is last year. I think they're different types of prospects. Politi to me is more of just the low floor or low ceiling, high floor. He's probably an org reliever. Maybe he can be an up and down guy. Maybe he's like a 6th inning reliever. Whereas Fernandez just has better stuff, but higher injury risk. So,
but that's perfect for a Rule 5 pick. No.
Well, but I think the thing that doesn't get really thought about is a lot of these teams have 1 or 2 roster spots, and if you
teams don't take 3 Rule 5 picks.
Exactly. Very rarely do they do that.
Rarely do they take 2.
And this is what happened to Wickham and Gonzalez last year is it gets to a numbers game. You have 2 guys for 1 pick and they have similar upside, but one is healthy and one's not. You're going to take the healthy guy.
Yeah.
That's where I wonder if Fernandez is going to get dinged on teams' boards because of his injury risk. And that's why I think that ultimately I have a feeling they're going to gamble and leave him unprotected.
Yeah,
but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did protect him. It's a lot of it's going to come down, honestly, to how they view him internally with their metrics and everything.
Sure, and his health, because he's one guy who it has been hard to come across information about the injuries he's had, and there are some guys you hear about. There are some guys you don't hear about, and he's been in that latter group.
Yeah,
pretty solid.
But they know a lot more than other teams will about the injury history there. So.
Yep. Yeah. Who do you have as the next most likely guy to get protected then?
So is this to get protected?
To get protected or selected, take your pick. But is it because there's there are several names that I could think of right now. Oh, I know who you're gonna say.
No, it's not him.
Okay.
You were thinking of a lefty who recently joined the organization?
No.
Oh, okay.
Although had I thought of him, he might have been.
Who did you think I was gonna say?
Cepeda.
No.
Okay.
He falls. So we can talk. Do you want to talk about categories?
Yeah.
Or do you want to wait? Because I'll
answer my question first because I'm curious.
Grant Gambrell.
Gambrell. Okay. Fair. Yeah. Because with him, it's proximity to me. It's the thing.
Teams need guys.
He got to AAA and he did okay.
Yeah, and it's not a high ceiling. It's a pretty low. It's like low ceiling,
sinker
higher
ball
floor
guy. Yeah.
He's got a bunch of pitches. He throws strikes, and I think the most and this is the key is he needs to throw strikes more like he did in AA and high A than he did in AAA, because I think in AAA his walk rate was up like a few percentage points. Yeah. But teams need pitching, big league ready pitching, and if you have an org and you decide that he's big league ready, then he's someone that you could see. He's I think him and Drohan are the 2 guys that you could see contributing innings to the Red Sox next year in some capacity. And so, that would be for me. It would be him. It's just purely a proximity thing.
And it's based on what the internal eval of him is.
Yeah, it's going to have
Do
to
they
come
see
down to
him as a
that.
guy that could help in the major leagues this year more than guys who are on the 40, more than a number of guys who are on the 40, right? Because it's not just this player versus Logan Gillespie, this player versus Zach Weiss. It's this player versus a number of players who are currently on the 40 and players who you are going to acquire over the course of the offseason.
Exactly. And that's why I think he won't get protected is because of that. Like the upside's just not there to me to warrant. And then this is honestly going to be a common theme with a lot of these guys. The upside's just not there to warrant, especially for the pitchers, to warrant, adding him to DFA him later in the offseason, basically.
Yeah. And I think there's one more guy that's worth talking about in his own capacity before getting into maybe the archetype categories. And that's the lefty you were talking about.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I would have, so along with the two you mentioned, the other two I would have would be Bastardo and Penrod.
Yeah. I mean, Bastardo, I guess. Yeah. Cause he did get up to AA. I just think he's a dime a dozen interesting AA arm.
I just don't think his fastball is very good. And
and again, it depends on what the internal eval is there. Right. And
yeah, but just having seen him in AA, I don't see it. But
this is not to say we don't like the player. This is saying,
it's just,
are they going to get added to the 40-man roster?
It's just tough for him because his secondary stuff is better than his fastball.
Yep.
And in AA, it was pretty rough. So I don't think he'll get added, but he wouldn't surprise me. And then the wild card is Zach Penrod because
I have no idea what to think of him.
Yeah,
it's wild.
He's been in the org for a few months. He's 26 already, right? 26, I think.
And it's like, do you dare a team to pick in Rule 5 a guy that before this past August had last played affiliated ball in like August of 2019?
It was a guy that anyone could have signed at any point this year.
Yeah.
But the tricky thing is that he's a lefty who can top out at 97.
And you sent him to Arizona, rightfully so.
Pitched well there.
Yeah.
And lefties who throw 97 up to 97, he's mostly like 93, 94.
He sits 93. Like, because someone the other day asked on Twitter, like, how many lefties are in the organization who get up to 96? And there are a few of them. Like, it's not like there are a ton, but there are. It's not like this guy's got the best lefty fastball in the system.
No, but like the fastball's got good shape. He's got a good changeup. So there are things to like there. And he's 26, so it's a weird case of could that work? I just don't see it again. I think it would be against the Red Sox MO, but I think the just overarching thing with these pitchers is the hard thing is we honestly don't know how Craig Breslow, like what his priorities are. So he could have a different internal belief in these pitchers than what we would have seen under Chaim Bloom, and that's I think the wild card is trying to predict what he's going to do. Is we haven't seen it, so we don't know exactly how he's going to view these guys.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. From there, I think you get into kind of categories.
I would agree. Yeah, there's hard throwing righties.
So there you've got Felix Cepeda, you've got Ryan Zephyr-John. I thought there was
Justin Hagenman.
Yeah, Hagenman. That's right. Chi-Jung Lee, you could probably throw in that category.
Yeah, actually, Hagenman doesn't throw hard. He's like 92, but. I guess right-handed relievers would be the overarching type with these guys.
Yeah. Rita Senna is probably another guy worth throwing in there.
He's another one who throws hard. Yeah.
Yep.
But it's kind of like Politi. Like they're either further away. I just don't see it.
If you want to use the roster spot on him, you tip your cap and you take the 50K, right?
Yeah. Because these guys are all further away. They're all further away than Fernandez. They have similar or worse stuff. So it's
then you get the category of guys who are really good prospects, but just too far away. The one that stands out there is Alan Castro. He was very good in high A this year. I just cannot see a team stashing him on a major league roster all year long.
He's not a runner. He's not a great runner or standout runner. He's not a standout defender. The approach isn't really that. It's not, he would get eaten alive by major league hitting or major league pitching. So I just don't see it. And I would put Edinson Paulinho in the same camp as him.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's the other guy in that category for sure of guys who they're just too far away.
Yeah. They're just too far away.
Even if you're an organization that likes them. Because the thing too is that this whole take a guy and stash them thing kind of happens, but kind of doesn't because it just never works. It literally never works. It can slightly guys development too much. And this is the generation of guys that lost a development year in 2020.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. It's so much easier with pitchers than hitters. If you go back and look at last year's Rule 5 draft, I think almost all pitchers. Yeah. So and when it's hitters, it's someone who can play defense, someone who can really run, someone who can catch. Like there's specific archetypes, and Castro doesn't really fit into any of those, and neither does Paulinho.
And then I think there's a couple more position players we should mention. One who's just, it's weird to me, is Steven Scott, a guy who hit in AAA this past year, but just doesn't really have a position. Like he's not a major league catcher. I wouldn't surprise me if he messes around and gets like a few years as a backup that plays a lot on a like second division team. How he gets to there, I don't know, but I just can't see him getting picked in Rule 5. And
no, me either. Because especially because he can't hit lefties. Like there's just some he's basically just a fastball hitter. So
yeah. And the other guy that I hate that we have to mention, but we probably have to mention, and this is, I guess we can mention Noah Song really quick because people are going to be wondering about him. I want him to get picked just for the pure chaos of it.
If a team is willing to take him, the Red Sox will be fine with it.
I mean, for what he is right now, and to be clear, if Song and I guess AJ Politi, if either of them gets picked again, they don't get offered back to the Red Sox.
Oh, really?
They just become free agents. So if they get picked, they're gone.
Watch Dombrowski pick him again and just immediately DFA him.
Yeah, just as a giant middle finger extended towards the organization. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Like, I think again, it's just kind of like, look, if you want to do that for the guy, like,
well, and also with Song, I didn't realize that because we talked to him about him, I think on the last episode, he is apparently in the reserves right now and not really able to do baseball stuff until January either. So
I know he was going to do the reserves in the offseason, but
it's not ideal.
Because here's the other thing too, is like nothing prevented him from doing baseball workouts while he was on base and stuff, other than like having enough time. But like
the schedule, I don't know what his schedule. I'm not going to speculate what their schedule is like, but yeah.
The one more guy who we do need to mention, unfortunately, is Brian Bonacy. Bonacy obviously was suspended. We talked about it on the podcast. I just think it goes without saying that he is, I think you would call it a toxic asset right now.
I would be stunned if a team was willing to take a gamble on him. That's not a headline you need.
You hate to like say that organization benefited because they certainly don't benefit from what happened with him.
No one really benefited.
No one benefits, but at the same time, like
the decision was taken out of their hands.
The decision, there's just no decision to make because it's like if a team wants to select a guy who's on that suspended list right now, like he literally may never play baseball again.
Probably, yeah.
I just can't.
We don't know anything. No one knows anything other than the Red Sox, so I just can't see it at all.
No, so he's definitely not getting protected. I would be my jaw would hit the floor if he got picked. So I just think he's not getting added.
I feel like this year is just way more straightforward than past years.
It really is. I think it's 3 guys. I think they have 3 spots. I think we find out on Friday whether or not Luis Urias gets tendered a contract. And we go from there, and then we start seeing what happens over the course of the offseason.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they tried to trade some of these guys tomorrow, like do like the Yohan Ibar, Christian Koss trade from a few years ago.
Sure, yeah. I mean,
if you find a team that like really likes Felix Cepeda or really likes, I don't know, Ryan Zefferjon, maybe you do something like that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I just there's no one who in the list we talked about that if they lost, I would be like it'd be that.
And there was one trade like that the other day of like a Rule 5 guy for a non-Rule 5 guy type trade. I don't remember who was involved, but I did see that there was a minor trade that went down. I want to say it involved the Rays.
The Rays did several. They traded. I know they.
It's not the Blake Hunt deal. It was a different.
No, the Blake Hunt was one though.
Was it the Blake Hunt?
Blake Hunt was on the 40. They did what they did 2. They did him and they did. I want to say they traded like Jonathan Aranda or someone, but I don't think it was him.
No. Beeks got claimed on waivers. I know that, but. They did. Yeah, because they put a bunch of guys on waivers because there was a deadline by which you had to put guys on waivers who if they would become a minor league free agent after clearing, there was a deadline by which you had to do that if the player didn't have a 2024 contract.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who gets put on waivers from here on out needs to have a 2024 contract. Just because you don't want those guys to be screwed by getting DFA'd later in the offseason.
They DFA'd.
They DFA'd a bunch of guys. There were teams that DFA'd
they DFA'd like
5 guys.
8 guys.
Yeah. There were teams that cleared a bunch of spots because they had to, because that was the
Michael
deadline
Mercado
Is that what it was?
That was the other one, yeah.
Yeah. So those trades are happening. We'll see if the Red Sox make any. I don't think they're going to.
Me either, because I just don't think you're going to get very much for these guys.
No. And it's just like, if you want, look, if a team wants to take a guy in Rule 5, like, good luck, because if he doesn't stick, you got to offer him back, you know?
Well, and I think the one thing to take is, you remember last year, the guys we were uncertain of was Hamilton was kind of the weird one.
Hamilton kind of came out of nowhere, and we probably should have thought about it more.
And that was more, I think everyone was still adjusting to the rules changing. We didn't really understand the impact of that.
And Abreu, we were probably a little low on.
A little bit, but at the same time, we'll discuss Abreu more in the end of season rankings discussion. But
we will.
There's still a lot of skeptics about him, so
there
could be a wild card, but we'll see. I
think we're going to talk about it before the next episode. Then
there was no one that fits that bill, because those guys were all high minors. They don't have any position players in the high minors to me like that. They have the guys who are eligible are either guys,
the Sogards and Fitzgeralds and Scotts of the world,
exactly, or it's the guys who, like Christian Koss, who was eligible last year, or Matthew Lugo, who had a terrible year. So it's just guys you don't need to protect. So,
or guys that are really far away, which like every organization has right now because of 2020. Every organization's got an Alan Castro.
Yep. So it's I think that it's pretty straightforard, and saying that will probably be crazy. So, and if it's crazy, we'll talk about it on the next one.
Sounds good. All right. Well, this has been a Sox Prospects podcast short. Maybe we'll come up with a catchier name. I thought about maybe Short Hops, but how about this?
We need a catchier name.
If you have a catchy name for the short episodes, hit us up, podcast@SoxProspects.com. We want to talk about what you all want to hear about. Thanks for listening. We'll be back hopefully later this week with a full episode, because next week I'm out of pocket for the holiday. So we'll see what happens today, and we'll talk about it later this week. Thanks, everybody.